So we've talked about Cowboys owner Jerry Jones moving on from Mike McCarthy. He has spoken to Deion Sanders about the head coaching position. We've spent a lot of time on that side of the story. How about McCarthy's future? He is expected to interview with other teams this week. Shefty reporting he could interview with the Bears as soon as Wednesday. Remember, they were interested in talking to him, and Jerry didn't allow it last week. One person who had an immediate reaction to that McCarthy news was our Dan Orlovsky, who tweeted, "Honestly, I would like Mike in Chicago with Caleb." And I can give you a note. In the over 100-year history of the Packers and the Bears, which is the oldest rivalry in NFL history, no one has been the head coach of both franchises. Obviously, McCarthy was once in Green Bay. How would you feel about McCarthy now in Chicago, coaching Caleb Williams and company? Jeff?
I don't love it. I'll say this. I understand what Dan's infatuation would be, is it's all pre-snap, right? Because that's McCarthy's offense. And so he's going to force Caleb to look, process what's going to happen, maybe limit some of the mistakes he made pre-snap of understanding what defenses look like. I'm just not sure it's today's style offense, which Caleb Williams, it's not Cliff Kingsbury walking in with Jaden Daniels, right? Who's basically sculpting an offense to that player. McCarthy's going to come in and run his system. You saw what he did with that when he pushed Kellen Moore out. That's going to be the system he runs, and so I'm not sure that's top end for Caleb.
And that system was really successful with Dak Prescott. I'm not sure if Caleb has if his ability plays well with Mike McCarthy, but I generally just hate the idea of trying to hire a head coach for the quarterback. Like, that's not, you hire a head coach for the team and then build the team in the way that you want.
So do you like it?
No, I don't like it because to Jeff's point, I'm not sure the reason why you would hire Mike McCarthy is because of his offensive prowess. And I do think that this offense is not an offense that I feel like is in the future of pro football. So, I think it's a great offense for Caleb because it takes a lot of the in-snap thinking away, and it's more like hit your step and let the ball go. But I'm not sure that makes easy answers for Caleb, which I think he needs some easier answers.
And when you talk about Mike McCarthy, you're talking about a play caller / head coach. That's the difference. And from my perspective, when Dan's talking about this, it's one thing to bring in an offensive-minded coach who's a head coach who's not. McCarthy wants to be the play caller,
right?
So that's going to touch that QB every day. By the way, he can't be in every meeting every day if you're the head coach. You're going to have somebody, a Josh McCown type, or name there's a number of different QB guys. Mark Brunell, right in Detroit. There's going to have to be a guy who sits down with that QB and walks him through it. When you're the play caller and head coach, I don't love that for a young quarterback.
Louis Riddick, what do you think? Mike McCarthy to Chicago.
Yeah, look, I understand what Dan's getting at, and I think everybody has touched on it. They want to really surround Caleb Williams, or rather puts Caleb Williams in a system that provides more structure for him and takes some of the ad lib and free form. But he said, someone there on the panel said, they don't like when teams do that. This seems like that is exactly what they're looking for. I think Chicago. Look, there's a lot of other things that still need to be fixed there. And look, is Mike McCarthy now, forget his offensive system. Do you believe, though, that he could wind up taking this program overall as far as constructing a staff, making sure that he's in sync with Ryan Poles as far as how this football team looks, not just for the next year, but for the next 3 years? Look, is he the guy who you want? Does he have that kind of vision that marries up with what you want, in addition to him being good for Caleb Williams? I really don't know that because we haven't really talked about Mike McCarthy in that vein as far as being a program builder. So I think this is one of those situations and one of those hirings that really I'd have a lot more questions than just whether or not he would have a positive impact on Caleb Williams. So I'm up in the air about it.
So, Graziano, if you would, you're obviously covering all of this stuff. And there are 5 vacancies right now and all the rest of that. There's 6? They didn't close one of them with the Patriots?
Well, they did, but then another one opened with the Cowboys.
Oh, that's okay. Fair enough. Sorry, you're right. I overlooked the Cowboys, which would be a first in the history of this show. Of the McCarthy of it all and the everything of it all, where are we as far as the things fans should know?
Well, the Patriots, rushed to their decision as they did last year, and now everybody else will take, I think, what is more of a normal amount amount of time. I think you have guys interviewing this week that couldn't, by rule, interview last week because their teams were playing. So you'll see like the assistants from the Eagles and the Vikings and the Bills and Baltimore do their interviews. So then everybody will get through their first round this week, and then I think there's regrouping this weekend, and I think next week we'll start to see some news on some of these coaching moves. Maybe McCarthy is a candidate in Chicago. That I do think they will talk to him. Not allowed to until after today because of the contract in Dallas, but I think they are looking for somebody who's been a head coach if they can do that, and he is somebody that has, to Lewis's point, operated the organization the way a head coach does, and you're not always sure you're going to get that if you just hire a coordinator who hasn't done it before.
All right, we will see. Again, all these decisions probably start getting made sometime late this week, next week.
Middle of next week, maybe.
We will find out. That we don't know for sure. Here's the one thing I do know for sure. It's time for pancakes.
As far as a coveted job, I don't know that that's accurate. I mean, really? I do think the Cowboys are obviously a high-profile team. Whoever is covered or whoever is head coach of that team is certainly going to draw a lot of attention. But I think most football people that take over as a head coach, they want to do it on their terms.
That's fair.
That's hard to do. And it's, if you take a Dan Campbell, for instance, is Dan Campbell if he's with the Dallas Cowboys? It's hard to imagine that he is. It's hard to imagine that a lot of these coaches might be. So I love the Dallas Cowboys. I played there for 12 years. I wish them well. But to say that it's a coveted job, I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that.
Okay, so those are very strong comments coming from him. Yes, that was remarkable. And just sort of the setup of it, because Van Pelt asked him in the question, sort of suggested it's a coveted job. And I understand why, because you become the most famous coach in the NFL the day you take it. And a lot of people like that. And they'll look at that and they'll say, oh, I'm the one who can do that. If there's one thing we've learned about, generally speaking, coaches, they have huge egos and they think, oh, I'm the one who's going to go in there and I'm going to become the biggest star. But you got Aikman saying, that's the job people want.
The way that Troy worded it, I found particularly interesting because I talk about that job as one of the parts of it that's not interesting is because Jerry Jones will make your job more difficult. But Aikman kind of made it sound like Jerry Jones is going to keep you from growing into, like he's blocking out the sun that you need to become, like Dan Campbell can't become Dan Campbell because there's this limiting factor that's always hovering over you. So we understand that the young, like a more established coach might do better there, but a young up and coming, like hotshot coach who wants to become something more, I can understand how difficult it would be for them in that situation.
It's been a while since they had a coach that could kind of, rise above it, right? Like theoretically, if you go in there and you win, right? If you get to a Super Bowl your first year, your second year, then all of a sudden you might have a little more power.
But it's really hard to do that in that situation.
But I mean, in terms of appeal of the job, like which of the open jobs has an obviously better quarterback situation right now? There are some things about it that are attractive. It's unique because the way we perceive it with Jerry is that he wants a certain kind of guy and maybe somebody that's okay with him getting the amount of attention he gets. But I could see people out there saying, no, I could make it my own.
Hear me out. Jerry Jones is a lot of things, all right? I don't know him. You guys know him way better than I do. I've, been in the same room with him maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. But you guys sat up and said, he's a lot of things. People will say he's a smart man, right? Yeah. I mean, he is obviously in a lot of ways a very smart man. And if he hears someone like Troy Aikman saying that, don't you think there's some part